So now Lola can see the big picture. It's not just about her and the personal conflict that she has with Mario Ruiz de Velasco. It's about the battle between J-Block and Tech Spania and the future of the cybersecurity market. Now, she's considered to be the weak link in the chain, the most vulnerable part of the company, and that's why she's under attack. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the chapter. Listen out for the common expression included in this short paragraph.
She felt isolated and vulnerable, as if she were swimming with sharks.
Swimming with sharks. It's an obvious expression. It means that you are in an environment where there are dangerous people. And you may not know exactly where or when they are going to strike. And it makes you feel really rather vulnerable. Have you ever been swimming with sharks? Have you ever operated in an office environment where you felt like you were surrounded by dangerous people? I hope not. Okay, let's move on to the next fundamental element of business English. Listen carefully to the following exchange.
Why were you fired from Tech Spania? I wasn't fired. Really? Yes, really. I resigned from the company.
Let's make sure that we understand the verb to fire, because it's often misused by advanced non-native speakers in business situations. So let me make it clear. There are essentially two ways that someone can lose their job. The first way is when they have done something wrong. It is their fault. Maybe they lied. Maybe they cheated. Maybe they completely screwed up. But it was their fault. And in this situation, we use the verb to fire. There are a couple of synonyms of the verb to fire. We could also say to sack. That's also quite informal. And to dismiss, which is the formal way of saying to fire. And in each case, is the fault of the employee. The second way to lose your job is when it's not your fault, but the company you work for is in trouble, or the economic circumstances are extremely bad. So the only option for the company is to reduce the workforce. And there are probably a lot of people that will be losing their jobs in this situation. So in this case, we don't use the verb to fire, to sack, or to dismiss. We use the verbs to make redundant, to let go, to lay off. Those are three synonymous verbs that mean somebody has lost their job, but it's actually not their fault. It's the economic circumstances. And it is critical to differentiate between these two distinct ways of losing your job. So, for example, if you come home and you say to your partner, "Darling, I just got fired," your partner is going to say to you, "What the hell did you do wrong?" These words imply that you as an individual have done something bad or incompetent that merits the loss of your job. Now, if on the other hand, you come home and say to your partner, "Darling, I've just been made redundant," then your partner will probably say to you, "Oh, poor thing. Let me make you a cup of tea. Here, sit down on the sofa and I'm going to look after you." These words mean that it is the economy or the company, not you, that is in trouble. And you are in many ways a victim of this situation. Now, the interesting thing about all of these verbs is we most commonly use them in the passive voice. It's much more common to say, I was fired, than it is to say, the company fired me. It's much more common to say, my father was let go by the company, than it is to say, the company let my father go. So why do we use the passive voice here? Why do we ever use the passive voice? Well, because we are more interested in the recipient of the action. We are much more interested in the thing being acted upon. In this case, we're much more interested in the person that has lost their job than we are in the company that is doing the firing or that is making people redundant. And that is why we create passive voice sentences such as, I was dismissed this morning, rather than the company dismissed me. They were made redundant last year, rather than the company made them redundant. You see, we're using the passive voice. We change the order of the sentence in order to focus on what is really relevant and interesting to the listener. Now, business English style guides encourage you to always speak in the active voice. They say it's simpler, it's more dynamic. But this is an exception. This is when the passive voice is more appropriate. And there are other business situations where the passive voice is often used. For example, when a company seeks to avoid responsibility for something, it's very common to hear the line, mistakes were made, instead of hearing somebody admit, we made mistakes. That's a classic use of the passive voice. Here's another example. The company was advised to avoid tax. Instead of hearing somebody say, we advised the company to avoid tax. So lawyers will use the passive voice to defend their clients in court and in contracts. Public relations companies will use the passive voice to protect the name and the reputation of their clients. Having said all that, let's return to the case of Lola Badiola. Because we know that she was neither fired nor laid off. She actually resigned. That's another important business verb. And the relevant noun would be resignation. Be careful with the pronunciation there. To resign, resignation. Is that all clear? Good. Now let's move on to phrasal verbs. We have 3 beauties for you in this particular episode. Have a listen to this sentence again.
The 2 agents from Interpol sat motionlessly, waiting for her to respond, watching her clam up.
To clam up. That's the phrasal verb that we're going to analyze now. So first of all, what's a clam? Well, it's a very tasty seafood. You'll find it in an Italian restaurant, in a spaghetti vongole, in a French restaurant with palourdes au beurre, in a Spanish restaurant when you order almejas, and in a German restaurant when you suck on a Venusmuschel. Okay, you get the idea of what a clam is, right? So what do clams do when they sense danger? Their shells close. So to clam up is a reference to a clam that shuts itself tight when confronted by a predator. So to clam up, in a kind of metaphorical sense, means that you suddenly become silent. It means that you are nervous, that you fear danger around you, and your instinctive response is to stay very quiet. And that is what Lola does. She clams up because she is confronted by Interpol. Okay, here's our second phrasal verb. It's a really important one because it has 3 different common business usages. Listen carefully.
Lola felt the emotion building up inside her. She was desperate not to break down in front of her boss.
Okay, number 1, if a person breaks down, then they are unable to control their feelings and normally they start to cry. So in this case, Lola is desperate not to break down in front of her boss. She doesn't want to get overwhelmed by the emotion and start crying. The second common usage is when we refer to a machine. So if a machine or a vehicle breaks down, it simply stops working, stops functioning. So for example, the air conditioning in this office has just broken down and it's starting to get very hot. The third common usage is when we talk about a system or a relationship. It's often used in discussions about negotiations. We would say, negotiations broke down because we simply couldn't agree on a price. So these are 3 very common usages of the phrasal verb to break down. When we talk about humans, when we talk about machines, when we talk about negotiations. And they're all related to the failure of something, the inability to continue functioning. Okay, our third and final phrasal verb is this one.
Lola started to tremble as the intensity of the morning boiled over.
To boil over. So this is literally when a liquid is boiling so vigorously that it overflows the container. For example, you might say, if you put too much water into that pot, it might boil over. And by extension, when we relate it to human beings, it's when you become extremely intense or out of control, especially after a period of escalation. And we normally refer to emotions boiling over. In this case, Lola has started to tremble because the emotional intensity has been building and building in the office all morning, and now it is starting to boil over. When was the last time your emotions boiled over? How did you react? Did you clam up? Did you break down? You see, these 3 phrasal verbs are often used when we're talking about stressful situations at work with our colleagues. And we will find out in future episodes how Lola deals with the pressure in her professional life, because that pressure is only going to get more and more intense. And on that note, we come to the end of today's class. Remember, if you want live interactive business English classes with me, then sign up to Club Gratton. Just search Club Gratton on Google and you will find us. Until we meet again, keep practicing. And remember, when you find yourself swimming with sharks, don't let your emotions boil over.